clear in our minds that this policy is already being implemented. And we've seen, we have evidence to that effect that India is interfering in Pakistan's internal affairs, it's interfering in Balochistan, it's trying to create mischief in Gilgit-Baltistan, and even in Karachi. And we have, of course, arrested a very senior official of RAW who has been interrogated and sang like a bird in regard to what activities he was pursuing in Pakistan and what were the ultimate objectives. Now, this is not really a desirable situation, and I think even in times of difficulty, in really tension-oriented period that we are going through now, the door should not be shut on dialogue. Because the two countries are both heavily armed. I think probably the most heavily armed border or LOC in the world. I think between the two countries there would be like 3.5 million people under arms. And not only that, both countries are now nuclear. So the point I would like to underline is that there is no room for war. I recently had an opportunity to meet some of my Indian friends, and I told them that this idea of a surgical strike I mean, you claim that you've had the surgical strike, but people in Pakistan or our people have really laughed it off. But the very fact that you're thinking about it is very dangerous. Because neither India nor Pakistan can climb the escalation ladder. That would be, quite frankly, suicidal, not only for India and Pakistan, but the entire region. So we have no right to hold the entire South Asia as a hostage. I think Rahul has made some very sound suggestions. Ceasefire was originally proposed by Pakistan. There is no written agreement. It was an understanding, and Pakistan took the unilateral step. And I think that would be a good starting point, because what is required is a cooling off period before we can actually get engaged in any dialogue. The dialogue has been in coma for a long time now. Since 2012, there really has been no discussion, the odd meeting here and there, but there has been no purposeful, result-oriented dialogue on any of the subjects. And in all meetings that India and Pakistan have had in recent times, the issue is India's position that we have to discuss terrorism. We are not interested in any other issue. So it's a kind of a stalemated situation for both countries. I'm not in favor of asking third parties to help. I'm certainly not in favor of big powers getting involved. I think India and Pakistan have enough capacity, enough talent to deal with issues facing them. But what is required is a political will. I'm not suggesting that there is no political will in Pakistan, but I think on both sides we need to. I think it is important for the people to compel the leadership to engage in talks between the two countries. There is a school of thought, and it is commonly written, that Prime Minister Modi has taken an aggressive stance against Pakistan, mainly because he is facing elections in UP and Punjab and I think Kerala and one or two other states. So a muscular approach towards Pakistan helps in his campaign. Well, this is certainly a factor, but I don't think the conditioning factor for India's current policy towards Pakistan. Now, Kashmir is on the boil. Now, India has been accusing Pakistan of interference in Kashmir, but I think it would be a great compliment to ISI if it can bring out 200,000 people on the streets of Srinagar and other places on the death of one. Quite clearly, this is a totally indigenous situation, an uprising. The whole world has watched what has been happening. The level of human rights violations has been very heavy. A lot of people have been killed, a lot of people have been blinded. And curfew has been imposed in several parts of Kashmir. So clearly, India is not in a position to control the current situation. And I have a feeling that there are two fundamental decisions that have been taken in India. One is this muscular approach towards Pakistan, keeping the LOC active as much as possible to divert attention, and also to take the toughest possible line inside Kashmir. Now, I don't think these are conducive for peace and security, for stability in the region. Pakistan's government has been criticized for being soft or for appeasing, following a policy of appeasement towards India. But one can have views on that matter. But by and large, Pakistan's Prime Minister himself has been following a very benign approach, has been repeatedly asking for dialogue with India, has been repeatedly talking about moving things forward, because his view is that some normalization of relations with India, which would involve people-to-people contacts, trade, all these things will help. But it is quite clear that as of now, there is very little room for expectation of a dialogue between the two countries. Now, the main thing is, how can we move forward? Is there any prospect, even in these difficult times, to see if some kind of engagement is possible? Rahul, one of the suggestions he's talked about is the back channel. Back channel, certainly our experience has been that very often it is reflective only of the view of the Prime Minister and the interlocutor. Unless a policy is broad-based and has a wider support, we don't really see much of a future in that policy. And I think the prime example really is the initiative that President Musharraf had taken in moving forward his 4-point proposal, but quite frankly, he didn't get very far. And I certainly believe that even on the other side, the Indian government, the then Indian government, was not really in a position to follow through with it, because Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, a wonderful gentleman, but I don't think he had the political base to carry forward with the ideas that were discussed between India and Pakistan. So back channel really creates more misunderstandings. So I would say that if India is sincere in pursuing peace and security in the region, it should really get into a straightforward dialogue. It could start at the highest level, they could talk about it, the grounds could be prepared for that, and sincerely, the discussions should really take place between the foreign ministries of the two sides. Pakistan is in favor of connectivity. In fact, the CPEC project between Pakistan and China, which is part of the much bigger plan of China, is about connectivity. And we feel that in the future, it would make sense if there is not only a north-south but east-west movement of shall we say, connectivity. The point I want to stress here is that we are currently facing a very difficult situation, and I think the international community ought to take notice of it, but encourage both capitals to move forward. I think that really is our only option. I just want to stress this point again about surgical strike. I told my Indian friends, please, let's not go down this road, because things can get out of hand. And I'm not even suggesting, I'm not thinking in terms of the prospects of nuclear exchange between the two countries. But I think the best thing is not to get to those kind of situations to begin with. And I'd like to emphasize that in Pakistan, in the past, there was a general consensus among political parties that we ought to have better relations with India, and that attempts should be made towards that. But I think that consensus has fractured, and it will probably take our government some time to rebuild that. On the Indian side, I think the consensus is very clear. No concessions to Pakistan, no compromise on Kashmir, no give on the issue of terrorism. We'll continue to emphasize that. And of course, they're talking about this policy of isolating Pakistan. How can you isolate a country? I really don't know. But in this context, two events are important. One, of course, is the postponement of the SAARC summit, or shall we say the sabotaging of SAARC summit. Right? And it is very interesting that India took the initiative. And within 4 minutes, messages from various capitals were received in the SAARC secretariat about the SAARC summit being not taking place. Secondly, the meeting in Amritsar. President Ghani is he's an intellectual, a very sophisticated man, but clearly he trampled over diplomatic niceties. And of course, it was much worse what the host of the conference, Prime Minister Modi, did. So I think there's considerable damage, but I think our advisor, who behaved in a very cool manner and made the right statement in Amritsar regarding basically, since it was about Afghanistan, he made the right statement and showed Pakistan's continued interest in peace and stability in Afghanistan. It's a tall order, we all know that, it's not easy, but Pakistan is not likely to give up just because our advisor was shortchanged diplomatically in Amritsar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Coker, for a very thoughtful statement. And now I have the honor to give the floor to Brigadier Retired Ben Berry, who is responsible in the National Institute for Strategic Studies for Defense and Military Analysis Program for ensuring the quality of Institute's analysis of land warfare and information on land capabilities presented in the Institute's flagship publication, The Military Balance. You have the floor, Brigadier.
Thank you. We are, all of us, prisoners of our experience. Now, my experience is that of an infantry officer and also a tactical commander of UK and NATO troops. I've also been an operational level and strategic level military planner, and I've also been a military intelligence officer. And the whole key to military intelligence is seeing others as they are and understanding how they might think and act. So what I want to talk about today is the influence of the non-state actor issue on potential conflict and escalation. It seems to me that India's response to the September attack on the Indian base in Uri crossed an Indian threshold. In India itself, it triggered a media feeding frenzy, which itself created political pressure for a tough response. And we saw the tough response in two ways: efforts to internationally isolate Pakistan, which of course succeeded in persuading regional states to withdraw from the SARC conference. And the second part was the Indian announcement of the so-called surgical strikes, actions, of course, that Pakistani officials stated did not happen. Now, whether they happened or not, the actions described by India appeared to be not bold, deep attacks by elite special forces, but more like infantry fighting patrols, attacking selected targets a short distance across the line.